Great, I'm 30 seconds late already. Thank you very much, Arlindo, for inviting me back. Mark's presentation yesterday about the ISO standards, it links with the one that I gave last year about compliance provides an illusion of safety. And what we're trying to understand, the work that I do, is trying to understand the storytelling. There's conversations we've had over the last couple of days about things that have gone well, gone wrong, and how do we exploit those. Karen, was asking about debrief and the lessons learned. I think there'd be an awesome opportunity to document that and then share it so other people can learn. But we've got some challenges in trying to understand what it is that some people in the diving industry know that others don't and could really do with that. So my background, I came from military aviation, 25 years in the Royal Air Force, flying on military transport aircraft, then went to work in research and development, trials, systems engineering, and that's where I got my sort of real passion about human factors, crew resource management, trying to bring it into the diving industry. So I spend a lot of my time teaching classes, using computer-based simulations to bring this stuff to life. The other part of it is about telling stories. And there's a lot of the stuff that I try and get across is in blogs on the Human Diver website, and I'm going to be publishing a review shortly. It was supposed to be this weekend, but been busy doing other stuff. And my academic development continues. I'm doing a master's degree at Lund University in Sweden, which is looking at what are the factors that influence storytelling in the diving industry, both positive and negative. So what we're going to talk about, give you a simple story, talk about numbers and narratives, understand a little bit about complexity, which the team who took part in the Human and Organizational Performance class explored that. Barriers to storytelling, what my initial sort of findings have come out with, and then we'll look at a complex version of the same story, and then give you some parting thoughts and takeaways. I don't have all of the answers. I've got a whole bunch of data and evidence from the safety science world, which I'm trying to bring into the diving space. And it requires a big paradigm shift, looking at fundamentally how it made sense for people to do what they did. So we'll start off with a simple story. And the simple story, unfortunately, ends up with a dead diver. They ended up pitting up or breathing 100% oxygen at 30 meters on a dive, had a oxygen seizure and died. And the simple response would be, analyze the gas. Make sure you analyze the gas and therefore you're aware of the gas that you're breathing. And that would be quite a simple learning that might come out of that story. And that's the sort of thing that gets shared on social media. And they're shared in the annual reports that get published by the British Sabbatical Club and the Divers Alert Network. So 2 documents, they're produced annually, which is great. I've done some word count analysis on the British Sabbatical Club report, the same with the Dan one. But the British Sabbatical Club report, the events they've got the most words are the fatalities. Average of around about 400 words, 450 words. That's 3 minutes of speaking. That's it. Some of them were only down at about 120. The decompression sickness events have got about 150 words. 1 minute of speaking to explain a story. Fatalities, in my perspective, are not a great way of learning because the person involved is normally dead. You can't ask them how it made sense for what they did from that side. Michael and I think Mark put something up about Rebreather Forum 4 and the statistics. We have an affinity for numbers. We want to know the numbers, and this is the trend that Frauke put up. Numbers are meaningless, I'm really sorry. And that's not just in the diving space. This is outside in high-risk industry, the safety science. They talk about something called total recordable incident rate. And if in a business has a good TRIR or total accident fatality incident reporting rate, if they've got low numbers, that means they're safe. And the safety science is basically saying that's rubbish. The fatality numbers we have are so small with a population that's so large, and the variability means that actually there is limited value in counting those numbers. But we want to focus on those because they're easy, they're measurable. What we really want to do, if we want to improve the learning, is understand the stories behind this. And this is one of the key pieces of research that I went into my master's. And it looked at railway construction engineers. And there's a conflict. The engineering company wants numbers. They want to know how safe the business is by counting incidents, accidents. And then they can say, yes, well, we put an intervention in place and it made it better. But actually, who benefits from the numbers? Who needs safety information? And it's the people that are at the sharp end. Those people who get exposed to the risk on a daily basis. And one of the things that Sanay found, that the author of this, was, you know what, the operators, they don't give a monkeys about the numbers. And they don't really want to contribute to the numbers because it doesn't benefit them. How they create safety is tell stories. They tell stories about the threats they encounter, the risks they encounter. And that's the same sort of thing that happens in the diving space. We tell war stories over a beer in the evening. I screwed that up massively. And often we focus just on the outcome and we don't look at the context. And what's even worse is we had a great outcome and they don't look behind them and see the train wreck that's there. And so we have a successful outcome which was lucky, but they think that was good. And one of the things that I bring into the sort of instructor development is asking the questions in the debrief: were you good or were you lucky? Oh yeah, we were good. All right, tell me what you can replicate the next time you do this task. Oh, yeah, maybe we were lucky. And that requires a little bit of self-awareness and having a structured debrief. Now, this is a pretty complicated picture. That's how events occur. And this is something called Aximap, developed many years ago. And what we're talking about is multiple layers within a system about how events occur or don't. And what we have in established environments, domains, is we have laws, regulations, policies, processes come down, and then we have feedback goes up that basically says it's working or it's not, and this is how we need to do changes. And when you have an adverse event, what you do is you start plotting things and you look at the relationships. Those who were in the class on Friday got engaged with this game of Jenga. And I bought a colored set that matches those 6 different layers. And in reality, we interact with the different layers. We take those bricks out. But if you're an organization, you're a leadership, you're looking down, hey, it's all hunky-dory, you see that top level. But in reality, this is what the system looks like. It's got holes. People create safety all the time, despite having those holes in there. And that system safety is created at different levels all the way through here. And actually, from my experience, explicitly, human factors, systems thinking, system safety is not called out in any of this stuff here. And I'm working with agencies to try and get some of these materials in. But it's not easy because the level of knowledge is relatively low. Now, some of you may have seen the Swiss cheese model and this animation that I put together, where we've got organizational influences, the things at the organizational level that try and make things safe, and then what we do to instructors or dive center managers to create safety, and then what happens that we set ourselves up for success or failure. But those holes move, they open, they close, and we get an accident happen. Now, the thing is that as an instructor, you inherit materials from your training agency, and you believe they're good. That work as imagined meets the need, and then you take it and you do stuff, but in reality it's not. Now Andreas is one of the candidates. This is his instructor exam earlier with Pepe, and we're playing this game, and just listen to the audio, so hopefully the sound picks up. So Pepe's pulled the bricks out, it's Andreas' turn.
Look at what you're leaving for me.
Right, the audio didn't say that. What Andreas said was, look what you've left for me. So in the diving industry, if you pull the brick out, you're it. You're the one that gets blamed for pulling the brick out and the tower collapses. But actually, look at all of the holes in that system. We're trying to do the best we can with the resources we've got. These are how we end up creating successful outcomes. We've got skills, we've got context. There's a bit of randomness, a bit of luck involved, and explorations in there, and then we've got these non-technical skills. But I know that there are things that limit our learning as well. Hindsight bias is a really powerful limitation. We look at an event and we just sit there and go, oh, that was obvious that happened. But in real time, we have got so many different potential outcomes. And we choose those outcomes based on previous experiences and to meet immediate goals. Then we have an adverse event, and then we have the armchair quarterbacks, the internet teams, and they sit there and go, you know what, you had two choices, the right choice, the wrong choice, you chose the wrong choice, you're an idiot. And you sit there and go, let's go back over there and see how many potential outcomes that are there. What are we doing to set people up? And then we end up with Captain Hindsight. Volume, please.
We tried getting in through the back. It was no good. Those people are gonna die if we don't do something.
Oh my goodness, it's a fire!
Come on, Coon Friends.
No, Eric, stay in the car, sweetie!
Can we try a helicopter?
The winds are too high. Chopper would burn in minutes.
All right, what seems to be the problem?
Get back, kids. It isn't safe.
Eric, Poopsie?
Whatever's happening, you need help from the Coon. And friends!
Keep those children back, Thompson.
Please, sir, you must let us...
Sweetie, let the nice firemen do their job!
Shut up, Mom! God!
Wait! Look! Up in the sky! It's him! My God, it's really him!
He's come to help us. Captain Hindsight.
Who's Captain Hindsight?
Captain Hindsight, the hero of the modern age. Once known as Jack Brolin, a reporter for the national news, the hero was born when a freak accident gave him the amazing power of extraordinary hindsight. From toxic spills to unjust wars, there is no task too large for Captain Hindsight.
Captain Hindsight, thank God you've come.
What's the skinny? There's people trapped in that burning building, Captain Hindsight, and the fire is so massive we can't get to them. You see those windows on the right side? They should have built fire escapes on those windows for the higher floors, then people could have gotten down. And then on the roof, they should have built it with a more reinforced structure so a helicopter could have landed on it. Yes, of course. And then you see that building to the left? Yes, they shouldn't have built that there, because now you can't park any fire trucks where you really need to. Well, looks like my job here is done. Goodbye, everyone!
Thank you, Captain Hindsight.
Thank you!
All right, everyone, I guess that's it. Let's pack it up.
And everybody laughs at this because they hear it so often. Could have, should have, would have, failed to. Those are counterfactuals. They don't help the learning. So what I did as part of this research was to go, what influences the storytelling? And these are just some of the initial pieces. The thesis is due to be submitted at the end of the year. First bit, what's the definition of an incident? How do we know what to report? And a part of that is linked with risk. What is an acceptable level of risk? In what? Oop, that went disappeared. Organizational influences. Some of the bits that have come is the agencies have said you can't tell things that have happened about bad stuff. It's not good for the industry, which I get, but that also seriously limits the learning that's possible. And these sort of data came from 4 focus groups, 2 interviews with lawyers, and a big online survey as well. So it was a diverse group, and I was looking at recreational, technical, cave, and instructor divers, understand what their perceptions were. Teams, social factors. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to get put down. Oh, this is a team thing. Happens within this team, stays in this team. But I can pretty much guarantee that what happened in that team will happen sometime over out there. So we've got to change that side. Fear comes in 2 sorts. Fear from peer pressure, being judged, fear of litigation. And that's why I included the lawyers in the discussion pieces to understand their perceptions of what limits the storytelling that's there. Context. That lack of context. It's very easy to judge an event without understanding how it made sense, this local rationality principle. And then actually there's the technical aspects of reporting an event. A meeting last week with the British Diving Safety Group, and one of the sort of comments was, what we need is an app. We need a better app to be able to capture this stuff. And I was like, yeah, the app is much smaller. You've got a whole bunch of social and cultural issues that need to be addressed as we go forward. And in fact, one of the questions I asked about creating change, only 9% of respondents said that's the most important thing. 27% of respondents said the organizations need to take on this bit about promoting honest, context-rich storytelling so we can learn from that. So there needs to be an organizational influence. But I get that that's difficult because of the way that the diving industry is set up. So what I said was actually one of the things we could do is how do you tell people how to tell a story? And this is something that will help people. It's called a learning review. And the first question that I always ask when I get involved in an incident investigation or a learning review is, what does normal look like? Accidents happen as deviations from normal activity of that team because they create safety all the time. If the single deviation of an activity led to an accident, we'd have way more out there. We create safety really well. So what was the change? And these are just some of the things, what are the pressures? Where do they come from? What do you get rewarded for? What do you get punished for? Number of certs? Yeah, you get rewarded for that. Do you get rewarded for the quality of the certification? No. So human nature is we go towards what we get rewarded for. So one of the prompts that you can have is something called intercon, looking at these different factors that led to the story. And the trade-off is, if we have categories, people want to put ideas into those categories. But if you're incompetent in a technical sense, having an aid memoir like this helps you think about the questions that need to be captured. And that learning review has a whole bunch of questions that you can consider. And that learning review is predominantly for sort of organized teams, dive centers, scientific diving, commercial, military diving as well. Looking at the factors that are out there. If you haven't seen the documentary If Only, please go and watch it. It's 30-odd minutes, and it tells the story of a diving fatality through the lens of just culture and human factors. And if you're an instructor, a dive center manager, whatever, you can run workshops. There's something you can download from that site. And these are the factors that came out of this. Active failures, this is the things that the people screwed up with. Very few compared to all of those. And that matches with science, safety science. It's looking at the system factors. These are all the factors that led into Brian Brugge's fatality. We've got this bit here. He entered the water with the oxygen cylinder turned off. Okay, fine. He'd done that 2 weeks beforehand and didn't die. He didn't pick up on that, didn't reflect on it. And there's a whole bunch of factors there. Now I'll go back to this complex story. This recreational setting on a dive boat, going offshore, and there's a mixture of recreational, technical team on there. The recreational diver who died had taken a spare cylinder of air in an aluminium 40 cylinder, and they were going to use it as a side sling, and that was going to extend their bottom time and meet the boat requirements for minimum gas. Breathe that first. Unmarked, unanalyzed gas. Fine. As a recreational diver, that's what would be expected. It's an air cylinder. Unbeknownst to him, somebody else brought an Ali 40 with 100% oxygen on it. And that Ali 40 was not going to go in the water. It was going to be used to O2 top the twin set that was going to be breathed down on the first dive. It was not analyzed. Sorry, it was analyzed, but it wasn't marked up. Those cylinders got put on the boat. They got moved around. When they came to the dive site, the recreational diver took their cylinder, or what they thought was their cylinder, put their reg on it, jumped in the water, breathed it, toxed. The guy who was diving the twin set had got no idea this had happened because he was in the water and his cylinder was on there and he'd never planned to get that in there. So to turn around and say, analyze the gas, yes, the technical diver should have marked up the cylinder, but from a local rationality point, why do I need to? It ain't going in the water, it's only me that's going to use it. And they didn't know that there was going to be an almost identical cylinder on the boat at the same time. And it's that context we need to dig into and understand rather than come up with a blanket, do X or Y. So, parting thoughts, difference between a safe and unsafe organization lies in not in how many incidents it has. Just because it doesn't have a high number of incidents or any incidents, it doesn't mean it's safe. What does it do when adverse events occur and how does it treat them? Which then leads us onto cultures are thus determined as much, if not more, by what they ignore, by what they pay attention to. And this is a difficult bit. I've been doing this for 12 years now. Human factors, system safety is difficult, it's complex, but it makes a difference. Safety science showing that if you plateau, which is where we are in terms of fatalities and incidents, you've got to do something different. We've got to change. And this is sort of quote for myself, we need to have a look at the relationships. And we often talk about accountability and responsibility. Accountability can be backwards looking, blame. It can be forwards-looking accountability, learning by telling a story, and not just stopping at the drift, the deviations, the adaptations. People do what they do because it makes sense to achieve the goals they're there. Some takeaways. Telling stories has got different means. Organizations want numbers because they can count those. Stories take time to tell, but users want stories. Knowledge without context is meaningless. Analyze your gas. Yeah, great. But unless you know the context, that doesn't necessarily help us. We have a huge focus on outcomes. We want to count those. How many rapid ascents, DCS, fatalities, entanglements. We know those. We know what those classes are. What we don't have is an understanding of the context, and that's a shift. Try and limit your observational biases, which is really hard because a bias is just that automatic behavior. Think about how it made sense. And the final bit is we are not linear. We don't follow a chain, this incident chain that happens. We are locally irrational to achieve the goals. And, from where was Becky yesterday? Going into the glacier. Gareth, shut your ears. No, actually, I totally understand that. There is a goal that needs to be achieved, and it's managing that risk. Some resources there. The book, the learning review will come up this week, and then there's another guide which I've taken some stuff into, and there's a blog with 150 plus entries on there. And that's me. I know I'm about 2 minutes over, so...